Today's headline is Woman Jokes Over 4 Rat Poison Charges of Murder. Today we're looking at Caroline Griggs, who is a grandmother living in Australia who killed 7 family members and attempted to kill 3 others before she was caught. Many of the people that she poisoned actually adored her and had a great relationship with her. And what's interesting about this case, and probably why it's historically important, is because it ends up triggering more murders. Like there's a lot of people who start copying what she did. Hi, I'm Angela and welcome to my channel. I have this series called Women That Kill, where I look at murder cases involving women as the killer to help people better understand history, because a lot of these cases reflect larger problems that were happening at the time. So today's case, we are looking at a grandmother in Australia who began to kill people right after World War II. So her killing started in 1947 and continued until she was caught in the mid-1950s. So let's look at Caroline's backstory. So she was born in Australia in 1890s. She got married at a young age, which was probably common back then. So she got married to Richard in 1908, and they had 5 sons and 1 daughter, although some of the children did not live until adulthood because they died of various diseases and things like that, such as typhoid. One of the interesting things is that the newspapers pointed out what she physically looked like, and they said that she was plump and jolly. And indeed, all of her family and friends only had wonderful things to say about her. They said that she was often a very happy and upbeat person. And anytime someone in the family needed something, she would always be there to provide them whatever. And she also was known to bring cookies and little desserts and things to her family just to do something nice for them. So she was just a beloved grandmother by her friends and family. Okay, so let's get into the murders. So like I said, no one would even have suspected this from her because she was so well loved. But we kind of see the trigger and where this all starts with her stepmother. So Caroline's father, or Auntie Carrie, father dies, but he had remarried before he died, and Caroline had a stepmother. So once her father died, the stepmother remained in the home that Caroline's father had purchased and lived with and raised his children in with Caroline's mother. And it appears that the stepmother was going to get the house. That I think in the will or something, the home was left to the stepmother, or at least for the stepmother to stay in it until her death. Or there could have been no will and the stepmother just inherited all the father's property. Whatever the case, we know at some point the stepmother was visiting Caroline and Caroline served her tea and cookies. And the stepmother dies subsequently after that. And Caroline gets her father's property. So that is the first time we see something suspicious happen. And it kind of revolved around her father's home. So as soon as her stepmother died, Caroline took ownership of her father's property. Then she started killing other family members. And here's the interesting part. She never killed blood relatives. She only killed in-laws, stepmother, sister-in-law, people who weren't necessarily blood related to the family, but who was going to inherit property from the family. So they were in line to get something, but they weren't necessarily family. They were married into the family and they were going to receive some type of property. Those appeared to be the ones that she targeted. So over the course of the next 6 years, people who were in line to inherit, a vacation home or something ended up dying. And the weird part was Caroline wasn't necessarily going to get the property after they died. It was just going to go to a blood relative in the family. So Caroline actually poisoned 2 to 3 other people, but they survived the poisoning and went into the hospital. And this is kind of the downfall of her whole situation. As those people are in the hospital, Now, around this time, this is the important part that you have to understand. Around this time, there had been an outbreak, a massive outbreak. There were 46 cases of people being poisoned by something called thallium, which was the fatal ingredient in rat poison. But they had all of these cases where people were getting this ingested, and even 10 people had died because of this poison. So the poison has no taste and no smell and can be added to anything, and it could kill a person. Also, it was the main ingredient in rat poison that was sold everywhere. So everyone had access to this. And when you put it into someone's drink or food, they could not tell that they had ingested it. However, by this time, police started knowing what the symptoms would be if you were poisoned by this, because it was becoming such a common thing. So the police now understand, okay, we know the symptoms. And when people come into the hospital automatically calls the police if they suspect that it has been this poison. So even though it's tasteless and you can't smell it or anything like that, there are certain symptoms that the police and the hospital started picking up on because it was so commonly used at the time to kill people. When these 3 relatives of Caroline go to the hospital, automatically the police know what they have ingested. The hospital knows what they ingested, and they immediately call the police, and the police are like, okay, someone's trying to kill these 3 people. So they put them under police protection. So the person who is protecting them is a female detective named Joan Ashmore. And Joan has medical background. So she was like a nurse or something, and she knew a lot about medical stuff because she worked in that industry prior to becoming a police officer. So they put her outside the rooms of the people that are suspected of being poisoned with rat poison. And she sits there, and every day she begins to notice something very interesting that's happening. She notices that Caroline is coming to visit her family members almost every single day. She is coming, and the family members are so happy to see this woman. They are all excited. They introduce Caroline to the officer saying, this is our cousin. She is an amazing woman. We all call her Auntie Carrie. The officer now sees that every family member, this person is related to all these people, and these people absolutely love this woman. So at first, the officer was not really looking at Carrie as a suspect or Caroline as a suspect. She wasn't, because this woman was so beloved by the people in the hospital. But then the officer started noticing every time Auntie Carrie would come, she would bring tea and cookies, biscuits for her relatives. And she would sit down and have tea and cookies with them. And her relatives loved it. But then the officer noticed they would become sick afterwards, or they were already sick, but they would seem to get worse after drinking and eating from whatever Auntie Carrie had brought them. So then the officer puts, 2 and 2 together. The officer put the pieces together and says, it's her. She's the one doing it. And so this triggers an investigation into Auntie Carrie. This starts an investigation of Auntie Carrie. The police basically take the cups and stuff that are there in the hospital, the tea and stuff that they were drinking from. She takes them and she gets them tested, and they test positive for rat poison. And that is how they figured out it was her. So she is arrested. And here's the crazy part. As the police are arresting her and telling her, you have been charged with killing 7 family members and attempting to kill 3 more who are currently in the hospital. As they're telling her that, she starts making jokes and laughing. And she does not seem to even care. And she thinks it's a joke. And the police arrest her. And that was noted. That was noted in the newspapers. That was noted by the police officers, how they were trying to tell her, you have killed people and we know you did. And she just laughed and made jokes like, oh, not me. I'm sorry, it's not me. And just made very light of that very severe situation. So she gets arrested. They go to her house. She has rat poison, but the problem is this is a common product found all over Australia. It's in households all over the world, including here in the United States. It's not a big deal for her to have this. And so when the trial occurs, she pleads innocent. She pleaded innocent, and she said that the police were hounding her. It was a witch hunt. They really didn't have any evidence. They were just trying to blame her, and she's just a grandmother, and she doesn't know why they are doing this to her. And she says that she is a happy person, and she just wants other people to be happy and help them live a better life. She does not kill. And for most, and here's the weird part, for everyone involved who actually knew her, they would agree she was a happy person, and she made it her mission to make sure everyone else was happy and secure. And it made it very difficult for a lot of people to understand and accept that she had done this. But the evidence was just overwhelming, and it literally only took 12 seconds for the jury to find her guilty. And they also noted that throughout the trial, she would just start laughing, and she didn't seem to really understand the severity of the issue, or that she was going to get in trouble. And it only took them 12 seconds, and she was found guilty, and she was sentenced to death. It was commuted, and she was sentenced to life in jail. And once she's in jail, the same situation. She is a favorite of the inmates, who now call her Aunt Tally because of the poison that she used to kill most of her victims. But it appears like when she's in jail, everyone loves her, and she has a great relationship with the other people in the prison, the other women in the prison. In 1960, she was complaining of pain. They sent her to the hospital, and when she got there, she died of pancreatic issues. And so she ended up dying in 1960. So she only served about 6 years in jail. And this story reminded me something that a presentation when I was in college. I took an intro to criminal justice law class, and we had a group of officers come in and talk to us about their experiences in law enforcement in case we wanted to become police officers ourselves. And one of the officers was super interesting. He was so interesting because he had been a police officer since 1990. And someone asked him, "Have you ever met a serial killer?" And he said, "Yes, one time." And he said that when he met him, it was not the boogeyman as you would perceive. Like in movies, it makes it seem like the serial killers are evil and weird and boogeyman. He said it was the complete opposite. He said when he sat down with that man to interview him, he had a welcoming vibe to him. He would be the guy, if you needed to ask someone for directions, his body language, his smile, and how friendly he was, he would be the one you would go to, that you would naturally be attracted to go to him and ask him for directions. Like that was when he sat down and interviewed him, he said that's the body language he gave off, a very welcoming, someone who looks like they would go out of their way to help you. And he said that's how he got his victims. He purposely modeled that body language. He did it on purpose to make people feel welcome and let down their guard. How he spoke to you was very pleasant and nice and respectful. And also, he was handsome. And all of these things caused people to let their guards down. And that's how he was able to get his victims quite easily and kill as many people as he did. I feel like this is the exact same thing with Caroline. I think she had that in her. I don't understand, but it seems to be that property and maintaining the family's wealth and making sure everything stays within the family became very important to her at some point. And also she seems to have differentiated between blood family and in-laws, people who married into the family. And she seems to have a very strict understanding that those people are not deserving of the property and things like that. So her case is important because there was a lot of copycats after this case, and even during that year leading up to this crime, there had been other people using that same poison. But after her conviction and the fact that she was in the media so much and that they were talking about the rat poison so much, it did lead to other crimes, to the point that places all over the world by the 1970s, including the United States, had banned thallium rat poison. And it was just one of those poisons that was easily accessible to everyone and could kill a lot of people, and which it did. So that is all for today. I'm Angela, and thank you for watching. If you want to see more episodes like this, you can look at my playlist or come back tomorrow. Bye, everyone.